Hey y'all, what's up? So listen, okay, I know I'll be having a lot to say on my graphics and the captions. Just can't contain it all. So here we go. So here's part two. Listen, I had no idea that National Grief Awareness Day was a day, but I felt like, okay, this one hit. So I posted I did. Even the other day when I made about like this whole month and kind of being in between that intersectionality, I also know a lot of folks that are also kind of in this grieving period, just wanting to be of service per usual. And with that, one of the things that I definitely want to mention is that I know that grief isn't just the experience of a loss of a loved one. So, but for me, it was that, right? You know, I have been laid off of jobs. I've experienced my parents' divorce, loss of friendships. Like, those are significant endings that can cause one to grieve and usher in those traumatic experiences and memories around those. But with those endings, I wasn't grieved in a way that I've had this like significant life change really. And it wasn't until the death of my father did grief really hit me in the ways I've outlined in my past posts. And there's many more that I didn't even like list within there. But in knowing that, and because I am a follower of Christ, I know that I'm gonna see my dad again. And though I know that, and I know that my dad is resting until Jesus comes back and that crack that sky open. Reconciling that with like, but yo, I still miss him. It's a thing. So, and one of the examples that I've talked about in these last almost 3 years is that, and I've heard it even taught too, like our mentor, Dr. Darius Daniels did a series on good grief. And if you haven't seen that, if you don't know who that is, I'll just tell you YouTube it, Good Grief by Dr. Darius Daniels. And one of the examples he put too is like, Jesus grieved Lazarus and he modeled grief, even when he knew he was going to like raise him up. And that shows like, even he had the feels. He modeled for us what that is like in this flesh. And God gave us feelings, and healthy grief is okay. It also says, even in Matthew, like, blessed are those that mourn, for they will be comforted. If it wasn't okay, then why would it be documented in the Bible? And for me, again, for me, the Bible is my playbook with the principles for me to live everyday life, and I've seen it proven, and it works. I've seen those principles proven time and time again, and it works. So this isn't something that I've just taken. This is something I've just like listened to my parents do, and no, I've listened and I've heard and I've seen the hand of God in so many situations. So pairing that even with the knowledge of how God has designed me, and even how he has designed me, to me has been even proven. And for those that are like, well, show me the examples, it's proven in trauma informed principles. So for anyone that's grieving, that's been asking me like, Tiff, what's like, how have you dealt with grief from your lens? My lens is basically, it is my experience, because that's what has helped shaped my viewpoint on this, even with being a certified trauma support specialist, right? And I would say the first aspect is acknowledging your grief response. And it is okay to feel, and it is okay for that, and validate your emotions. Acknowledge your feelings without judgment. The grief process looks different for each person. And one of the scriptures that I held on to and still hold on to, even when those moments come, is that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and save those who are crushed in spirit. And that's Psalms 34:18. So identify what safe looks like to you in this season. Like, establish that, because you are so sensitive while grieving the loss of someone, right? Little things that may not have irritated you, you may feel irritated about. You may not feel the same desire to do certain aspects or be around certain environments. Like, that is totally okay, but identify and name that and see that pattern. Definitely spending time in prayer, meditation, reading scriptures that's going to feed your spirit. Again, one of the ones that I just mentioned was like, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. That's Matthew 5:4. Defining your pace and being patient with yourself. Healing is not linear. It takes time. So being sure you allow yourself to process at a speed that feels comfortable for you. And I know that in the lives we live, there's always get back to work. There's the everyday things that we need to do. But that's why defining what that pace looks like, setting what safe looks like, and acknowledging, staying in tune with how your emotions are, what you need in this season is so important. Because one encouragement that I would definitely say, like, I found hope in anchoring myself in God's promises. Those that hope in the Lord, He's going to renew our strength. He's going to renew my strength. And I am eventually going to soar. I will soar on wings like eagles, and I'm going to run and not be weary and walk and not faint. That's Isaiah 40 and 31. So I did get some questions about the video I just did earlier in the week about overcoming the creative blocks. You know, I mentioned that I pray. And again, for me, one of the questions was, like, what? Okay, pray, but what? Like, I pray or I don't know the words. Like, for me, I pray for strength in the moment, the day, whenever I'm triggered, whenever I know the season is coming up. I'm praying for peace in my mind and my emotions and my family. You know, everyone's grief journey looks different, but I know they too miss my dad. So we like praying that, like, my grandmother just passed, like, keeping that continual of not even just me, but those that surround that's also feeling that same loss, for their comfort. I even pray for, what's the strategy to overcome that moment, or overcome, give me strategy on what to come out of the next moment that might come when I don't even have the words, because it will, like, I already know November time frame, I already know how I be feeling. And so for me, that's prevention. That is prevention. And being able to send those that's gonna just reach out to me, whether that's a random friend, whether it's go out. And even my husband has gotten so much better. And I appreciate even the communications we've had of, like, what would you like me to do when those moments come? How can I help? What can I do? Like, what's the parameters that you have? Because that, like, a grieving wife was different for him. Um, I was just crying all the time. Like, it just be out the blue. We in the store, and all of a sudden, a real thing. So, strategy, and then as well of, like, what does flowing in my happy place look like? For me, again, I told you I'm a nerd, so that was like, let me jump into, like, my mentorship curriculum and, like, knock out these assignments and look at these trainings, which fuel more creativity early on. Like, you may say, depending on where you are in your grief, like, I don't feel happy. I don't have the happy place. Don't feel happy no more. Totally legit. So early on, when my dad passed, like, I couldn't call it a happy place, but I found opportunity in journaling, being able to get a designated journal just for what I was feeling and what my emotions were. Reading, I actually dived into a couple of books about grief to actually understand what that looks like. Music, if there's like a music playlist that you put together, whether it's sitting on some water, like go to a little lake, or if there's something in your community, or again, you define what that looks like, right? And if you're like, again, you could be like geeking out, like, you know what, I'm gonna listen to this training or this podcast that I know typically gives me inspiration, and you define that for you. And again, like, those are some of the things that kind of deep dive into that. But, like, too, like, again, coming out of that place, if you're like, I'm trying to get back into a flow of things, you can't just let it sit. You gotta move um in that, and don't sit there. It's okay to lean in, but don't allow, like, you're saying, I'm just gonna spend this one day and I'm just gonna rest and just sleep today. That's okay. But multiple days and multiple weeks, like, I would definitely say consult a counselor, a trauma informed professional. Like, reach out to someone, let someone know what's going on with you, and from there, like, and then implement. So I hope going into it a little bit more gave more insight and more depth. And again, my prayer is that and I keep saying, like, for me, because we have so many, so many folks in social media world that's like, well, for me, that again, everybody has their own journey, everybody has their own process, and how you process may not be how I process. Like, what you believe may not be my belief. But as for me and my house, this is what I believe. This is what has helped, and has helped align different perspectives to that. And definitely, like, as well, another aspect, grief support group. If not a grief counselor, grief support group, that is super helpful. That helped me to get with other people to also hear their stories. Chew the meat, spit the bone as well. But even in that, it gave me inspiration to how I'm naturally wired and creative, to use my pain of missing my dad to create a grief support group called Daddy's Girls, for those women who are grieving their fathers and need help walking through that. So there's different things that'll come to you in your own way. So I hope you have a great day. I'm about to go on date night. Okay, babe.
What up?
About to go on date night. So, lay out. See you later.